Welcome back, friends. We'll spend just a few more minutes on Scott Adams because I think it's germane, and then we're going to move on to, okay, let's solve, or at least start on the path to solving it. Here was one response. Teach me how to recognize the good COVID. I put some other responses in the addendum. You can avail yourself if you care to. Response. The premise that COVID is very deadly is easily refuted when young and healthy people are unaffected. If he has any familiarity with clinical studies, then he should be familiar with the nocebo effect. And believe you me, that is a real deal. In Japan, treats nocebos very differently from American, but that's just on to the aside. So propagandizing everyone creates psychosomatic populations that check themselves into hospitals when they're not nearly as ill as they believe themselves to be, because they were told that they would die otherwise. That's what indoctrination propaganda. It takes 2 seconds to research and discover that all mRNA vaccines have failed up to this point. That's true. All the animals had died. That was a shock to me. Right. And I'm sure it was to you too. Yep. Further, all coronavirus vaccines have failed up until this point due to survival pressure and ability of the virus to mutate so rapidly. But we are to believe a sudden technological breakthrough occurs on a novel virus within months of its outbreak. This company that stands to profit significantly from me taking their product encourages me to take it. And so we're going to come to the meat where we're going to move to the next thing. I mean, how gullible are people? I mean, the evidence is totally so overwhelming. How anyone could take a COVID vaccine and believe that it is necessary and work beneficially is truly mind-blowing. That's only possible when you are taught what to think and not how to think.
Yeah, I mean, you have to also look at the past history of the past 20 years, which has been the training ground for that level of indoctrination, that a vaccine was to be given every single year for the flu, right? Every year you had to get a flu shot. And people just became accustomed to having their health distributed to them via a syringe. You know, you go to a doctor, they shove a needle in your arm, and you're guaranteed health, even though that was never true anyway. People who would get the flu shot invariably ended up with the flu. Then they would convince themselves that they didn't have it very badly, and that, oh, it would have been oh so much worse if I hadn't had the flu vaccine, right? And at the same time, I mean, I don't know the statistics on this, but I'm sure that they're easily looked into, that the same number of people have probably died consistently from the flu, more or less, every year, despite the fact that everybody has had a flu shot. But they have that is a level of indoctrination that people have ascended to, that they have been taught to believe that their health comes to them at the tip of a needle, delivering some type of medication into their arm. Bingo. And so they were overly susceptible to this novel concept because they had been being trained for 20 years to do it.
That's correct. And trained is the right word. Yeah. They were taught what to think and not how to.
Right.
So let's talk about education now, because that's much more instructive, which for purposes of our conversation must correspond to the truth in its fullest dimensions. Pope Pius XI, of blessed memory, Divini Ilius on Christian education.
Yes. That's a great.
It is great. Said he's going to help us have this complete understanding of education, and so avoid, not eliminate, but avoid, because as Sarah says, we're in a fallen world, those occasions of indoctrination. He has very clear. Okay. Preparing man for what he must be is of an anthropological question. So that is a big anthropology is the study of men. Then we're going right back into concepts of philosophy. And so we're gonna and we'll get to that in just a little bit. But in paragraph 7, Pius XI will state, in fact, since education consists essentially in preparing man for what he must be and for what he must do here below, in order to attain the sublime end for which he was created, it is clear that there can be no true education which is not wholly directed to man's last sin, and that in the present order of providence, since God has revealed himself to us in the person of his only begotten Son, who alone is the way, the truth, and the life. There can be no ideally perfect education which is not Christian. We immediately come back to episode 1 on the definition of doctrine, and we come back to the telos, the truth that God is the creator. Paragraph number 11. Education is essentially a social and not merely an individual activity. So it's not just about my own personal, me and truth. It's really us and truth. Now, there are 3 necessary societies distinct from one another and yet harmoniously combined by God, into which man is born. 2, namely, the family and civil society belonging to the natural order, right? The way Creator set things up. And the 3rd, the church, to the supernatural order. It is possible to have a proper education, not indoctrination, in what one would call a secular setting. In fact, Pius XI addresses this very objection. In paragraph 20, he will say, the church does not say that morality belongs purely, in the sense of exclusivity, to her, but that it belongs wholly to her. She has never maintained that outside her fold and apart from her teaching, man cannot arrive at any moral truth. She has, on the contrary, more than once condemned this opinion because it has appeared under more forms than one. Yes, so that's that hard part of education. You just can't climb onto a name of something. You have to know what the definition of that name means, because it pops up here like that. What is it? Hit 'em all?
Yeah, the whack-a-mole.
The whack-a-mole. Yes, it's just like whack-a-mole. She does, however, has said, and will ever say, that because of her institution by Jesus Christ, because of the Holy Ghost sent her in his name by the Father, she alone possesses what she has had immediately from God and can never lose, the whole of moral truth, omnium veritatem, in which all individual moral truths are included, as well as that which man may learn by the help of reason, as those which form part of revelation or which may be deduced from it. So that is Pius XI there.
Right. My apologies for the telephone. I have no children downstairs to answer it, so I'll have to just wait till it lovingly picks up by itself. I think it's very interesting with Pius particularly, that element of omnium veritatem, is that what you said?
Yes.
All truth.
Yes.
Right? Because it's obvious that reason can get you pretty far, right? I mean, there are a lot of people, and we saw, just because it is the most cogent and the most pressing example with COVID, how many people through reason alone, many of the scientists, many of the doctors, who really kind of, I think, had the scales fall from their eyes a little bit in regards to what they had just always kind of gone along to get along. Because before then, it didn't really matter. There was no great harm in going along to get along. So it is true that reason can fundamentally lead you to understand certain things, but reason alone will never make you happy.
That's right.
Right? There's another element there that, because sometimes reason alone leads you to suffering, right? I mean, to understand that a suffering is just going to be the reality of your life from now on. And it's only in the context of faith that reasonability that took you to that level of understanding can be infused with the supernatural element that the church herself can provide. And I think that that's what's lacking, like with a man like Scott Adams. I mean, I don't know his own personal, beliefs or anything like that, but even if he understands, it won't be sufficient. He'll always be wondering, why were other people able to do this with such peace, or even despite the agonizingness of it. And I think, before you had made some point about him saying that they have a clear conscience. I think he is right in regards to that. It's not our conscience that is bothered by our people that we know and love who took the vaccine. It's not so much our conscience that's picked, it's our heart that is sorrowful for them. But our conscience is clean. I mean, he is right about that. And we, for our own individual sake, don't have to worry about the consequences physically. But it's a foolish belief to think that we don't have to concern ourselves with the power wielding of the people who are determined that we take the vaccine in the first place, that we thwarted. I mean, so, right, yes, our conscience is clean, but it doesn't mean like you get a free pass.
That's right. That's exactly right. All right, my friends, let's pick up in the next episode with the 4 essential pillars of Catholic philosophy. Till then, my friends, fides oratio.